Hello and welcome to the News by Standards. Dominic Raab should be suspended as Deputy Prime Minister until an inquiry into bullying allegations against him is over, an ex-Tory chairman has said. Speaking to the BBC, Jake Berry said MPs and ministers were not some form of special human being and should be treated like anyone else. Mr Raab, also the Justice Secretary, is facing several complaints from civil servants who have worked with him in a range of government departments. He has denied allegations of bullying. In November, Mr Raab asked Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to launch an investigation into his own conduct after claims emerged about his behaviour towards staff. The inquiry, led by senior lawyer Adam Tolley, QKC, is ongoing, but Mr Sunak has come under pressure to suspend Mr Raab until it is concluded. Mr Berry, who was Conservative Party chairman in 2022, told Radio 4's Week in Westminster, "It would be very bizarre if you had someone in any workplace who wasn't suspended pending that investigation. MPs and ministers are not some form of special human being. I think they should be treated like anyone else in their workplace." He said there should be a formal mechanism whereby ministers could be suspended during investigations. Currently, it is not possible for a Prime Minister to formally temporarily remove a minister, although they sack someone with the understanding the minister would return if cleared by an investigation. Hannah White from the Institute for Government think tank says introducing a formal suspension mechanism could have some advantages, including allowing a minister to claim back lost salary if an inquiry concluded they had not broke any rule. However, she says it could discourage Prime Ministers from ordering investigations in the first place and increase ministerial turnover. Asked about Mr Sunak's handling of the standards issues, Mr Berry said, "We have a system in Parliament that you're either in a job or you're not in a job. The way these sorts of complaints would be dealt with in the private sector is you would be suspended while they were investigated." Labour and the Liberal Democrats, as well as the FDA Union for Senior Civil Servants, have also called for Mr Raab's suspension. Mr Sunak has said he will wait for the outcome of Mr Tolley's inquiry before taking any action. A mother of two says free cardiac screening funded by the parents of a man who died from an undiagnosed heart condition has saved her life. Georgia Guy, aged 24, was unaware of a hole in her heart until it was spotted during the screening event last month. Jill and Steve Ayling fundraised for and organised the Scunthorpe Sessions following the death of Miss Ayling's 31-year-old son, Nathan Bryan, in 2019. Free health checks are available on the NHS for anyone aged 40 to 74. About 200 people aged under 35 who did not have a diagnosed heart condition attended the free 2-day free event, with about a dozen being identified as having a cardiac issue. Among them was Miss Guy, a mother of two from Scunthorpe. She said she had no idea of any pre-existing heart conditions until the screening, where she was told she had a hole in her heart and it's leaking blood. "I was just speechless. I just started crying," she said. "I've got two very young kids, so if I didn't have this done, they'd be left without a mother. So it was a bit crazy, really. Jill and Steve basically did save my life." Miss Guy said she was now waiting for a referral to Leeds for surgery. The Aylings, who set up the screening sessions with help of the Cardiac Risk in the Young charity, have campaigned to make heart screenings free to all. Miss Ayling said she found her son dead in his bedroom when she visited him at his home in February 2019. She said he had an undiagnosed cardiac condition, and since his death, the family have fundraised to provide screening in their area. "We know there's a way to prevent this for other families," said Mr Ayling. He said about 12 apparently fit and healthy young people were dying from undiagnosed cardiac conditions every week in the UK. "We believe, Gill and I, that the government should provide mandatory screening to youngsters." The government said there was insufficient evidence to screen everyone under the age of 40. The Department of Health and Social Care said the unexpected death of any young person was a tragedy. The UK National Screening Committee reviewed screening young people for sudden cardiac death in 2019. They found there was insufficient evidence to support the introduction of whole population screening in the UK, a spokesperson added. However, this issue is kept under review. Standards. Pregnant women will get more protection against being made redundant under new rules set to become law later this year. Currently, workers have limited protection against being dismissed when they are on maternity leave. Under the new law, this protection would begin from the moment a woman tells her boss she is pregnant and until the child is 18 months old. Pregnant Then Screwed charity said Labour MP Dan Jarvis's bill was a step in the right direction, but needs more legal backbone. Mr Jarvis's bill was approved by MPs on Friday and will now be debated in the House of Lords. However, as it had government support, it is likely to become law and will apply to England, Wales and Scotland, but not Northern Ireland, where employment law is devolved. The Barnsley Central MP, the former mayor of South York, Yorkshire, said it would help the tens of thousands of women pushed out of the workforce every year simply for being pregnant. Currently, the MAPLE, which is the Maternity and Parental Leave Regulations 1999, say that an employer should not make a woman on maternity leave or a parent on shared parental or adoption leave redundant, and they are obliged to offer them a suitable alternative vacancy where one exists if their job is at risk. Mr. Jarvis's bill would extend the right to pregnant women as well as new parents returning to work. Women already have some protection under the Equality Act, which states that an employer cannot discriminate against someone because they are pregnant or on maternity leave. There are also employment laws which protect people from being dismissed from their job unfairly. However, Pregnant and Screwed director Joelle Braley said very few women are able to challenge employers who ignore the current protections because the legal system isn't on their side. And she added, women are often not made redundant but simply put in a position where they can no longer keep working. This is because their employer refuses to grant them part-time or flexible working arrangements. Sarah faced that problem when in 2021 she told her employers she was pregnant. She says her relationship with her bosses deteriorated when 5 months into her pregnancy, her request not to be put on shifts where she would be on her feet for more than 6 hours was refused. And after her baby was born, she says her employers rejected a request for part-time or flexible working and instead simply offered her a demotion and a pay cut. I don't want any other women to go through what I went through. It broke my heart, she said. Sarah felt she had no option but to leave the job. She's hoping a tribunal will still consider her case against her former employer, who the BBC understands disputes her claims. Pregnant and Screwed is campaigning for the government to extend the current 3-month limit on bringing unfair dismissal claims to 6 months, which it says will encourage more women to challenge discrimination. Joelle Braley argues that the time and expense puts women off pursuing a case. Some women are waiting more than 2 years for their first hearing. Nobody wants that hanging over their head. It is also very expensive if you hire a lawyer. Cases can cost up to £40,000 to £50,000. She added that trying to learn employment law when you are a pregnant or new mother was just not possible. Adults under 50 in England have just over a week left to take up the NHS offer of a COVID booster jab. It is the last opportunity for healthy 16 to 49-year-olds to get a top-up dose if they've not yet had 3 jabs. Vaccine can help protect against severe illness, even if you've caught COVID before. Appointments are available at thousands of different sites, including GP practices and high street pharmacies, up to and including Sunday the 12th February. Anyone aged 16 or over, or an at-risk child aged 12 to 15 who has had both primary jabs qualify for this booster, which has been available for more than a year. So far, 15,000 people have booked in for next week, and there are still 391,000 appointments available, says NHS England. Amid the spread of the more contagious Omicron variant in December 2021, health officials announced a booster jab for those who had already had both of that COVID vaccinations. An already widespread vaccination program was ramped up either side of Christmas that year to get as many people jabbed as possible. That offer of a 3rd jab for anyone remaining available throughout last year. For the past few months, a further autumn booster has been available for over 50s and some other people with health issues. NHS England has stressed that this 4th jab is not being rolled out to healthy under 50s. The new call is for those who never took up the offer of the 3rd dose vaccine to come forward now. Professor Sir Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer for England, explained why the booster jab remained important. We know that having the 3rd vaccination, the booster, is a very important part of immunity to COVID, and it provides additional protection. But Professor Whitty said it would not be available indefinitely. It is coming to an end on the 12th of February, and I would encourage anybody who has not taken up the offer to do so before then. After this date, the 3rd jabs will only be offered to people considered to be at risk of serious illness, as recommended by the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, the JCVI. But people who have not received vaccinations at any stage are still being urged to come forward. According to the latest figures, more than 151 million COVID vaccine doses have been administered in the UK. 53.8 million people have had their first dose, 50.8 million have had the 2nd dose, and 40.4 million have had a booster or 3rd dose. The latest publicity campaign is designed to attract any of the 10 million people who opted out of the 2 vaccinations. The government has said it expects another autumn vaccination campaign later this year for older adults, as well as a potential spring campaign for the most vulnerable. People with a severely weakened immune system were offered an additional 3rd primary dose before being offered a booster this winter. The NHS COVID vaccination programme will continue to run a smaller operation after the 12th February, allowing those yet to come forward for the 1st, 2nd or 3rd doses, if severely immunocompromised, to book appointments. Experts will also be keeping a close eye on new variants of COVID in case more people need vaccinating in the future. NHS Director of Vaccinations and Screening, Steve Russell, said there is just 1 week left of this autumn booster campaign, and so if you are eligible for a booster but but have yet to take these up. Please do so before the next end of week. Whether you've had previous doses or a bout of COVID, we know that a booster is the best way to maintain protection against serious illness for COVID for yourself and your loved ones. Please do make the most of the offer whilst it's still available and give yourself both protection and peace of mind for the year ahead. So how do you apply for your COVID vaccine? In England, you can book all doses online by calling 119, or you can visit a walk-in clinic. Some don't offer jabs to under 12-year-olds. In Scotland, over 16-year-olds can register for their first dose and book second or booster doses online, or by calling 0800 030 8013. In Wales, over 16s will be invited for their booster. If you haven't been invited or you haven't had your first 2 doses, you can contact your health board. You can change or cancel existing appointments online. In Northern Ireland, all doses can be booked online or by calling 0300 200 7813. And in terms of which vaccine will people get, the NHS is using Moderna's bivalent vaccine, which covers both the original COVID virus and the Omicron variant. It also approved a second bivalent vaccine from Pfizer. Health officials advise people to take whichever booster they are offered, as all vaccines provide protection against becoming severely ill from COVID. First and second vaccine doses are either AstraZeneca or, for under 40s, Pfizer or Moderna. A bogus travel agent who conned hundreds of holidaymakers in a £2.6 million scam has been jailed for 9 years. Lynne Barlow, 39, formerly of Stanley, County Durham, left more than 1,400 customers out of pocket when she failed to book trips between 2019 and 2020. She admitted stealing £500,000 from her mother, 10 counts of fraud, and a money laundering charge, including £1.6 million. Durham Crown Court heard she also lied to clients about having terminal cancer while carrying out the scam. Unscrupulous Barlow initially preyed on her family and friends, plundering their savings to set up an independent travel agency in which she lured victims with the promise of cut-price deals. Jailing her, Judge Joe Kidd said Barlow had an extraordinary talent for dishonesty, after hearing that she had stolen from her own mother following the death of her father in 2015. She also said she had mercilessly abused the trust of her family and friends. The judge added, "I take the view that you are a thoroughly callous individual. As your house of cards began to collapse, your lies became more extravagant." She said Barlow's behaviour was callous as she funded her relatively lavish lifestyle and gallivanted while her mother struggled to pay bills due to the money being stolen. Barlow told friends, family and angry customers she was terminally ill with cancer in order to emotionally blackmail those she owed money to. The court heard the married mother of 2 further deceive customers by telling them their bookings were protected by the Atoll insurance scheme, and she was a member of the Association of British Travel Agents, ABTA. News of her bargain holidays quickly spread on social media, seemingly endorsed by glowing reviews. However, many of those who took the bait were to find their holidays had either not been paid for at all or only part of their booking had been made. Some were confronted about the shortfalls while abroad and had to pay extra for their hotels and flights home. Others turned up at airports to discover they did not have seats on their flights or their bookings had been cancelled because of non-payment. Barlow would offer too good to be true deals such as a 5-star all-inclusive week in Dubai for £500, one local travel industry source said. They told the Press Association she did much untold damage to local travel agents who simply could not compete at the unrealistic prices. "We tried to tell numerous people it wasn't right, but as some people were travelling and getting the holidays at these prices, she was clearly funding the shortfall with other people's money. They wouldn't believe it. We even contacted her ourselves and tried to call her out, but she wasn't fazed in the least and actually tried to recruit us to work for her." As Barlow's Ponzi-style scheme began to unravel, she told some customers she was behind on bookings because she was having treatment for stage 4 cancer. It is believed she cut off her hair to make it look like she was undergoing chemotherapy. The judge added, "You have obviously presented yourself to those who knew you as a charming and engaging woman. You are clearly a woman of significant intellectual abilities, but even extraordinary talent for dishonesty." Barlow also mercilessly abused people's trust, the judge said, going on exotic holidays, enjoying having a Range Rover and designer goods. "The extent of the betrayal of your mother is truly breathtaking," the judge said. "As you gallivanted and your mother's utility bills were unpaid and county court judgments rained down on her, and that led to bailiffs visiting her home, I take the view you are a thoroughly callous individual." The judge said Barlow convinced her mother her cancer had returned, having previously been nursed through it before. She then urged her mother to look after her husband Paul and their children if she died. When victims began reporting the rip-off in September 2020, the stories began circulating on social media. Soon, Durham's police control room was overwhelmed by a torrent of calls from irate victims. Police took the unusual step of directing complainants to an email address to prevent 999 calls being delayed. An investigation started which became one of the biggest fraud cases in the force's history. Detective Sergeant Alan Meehan from Durham's Police Economic Fraud Unit described Barlow's actions as appalling. He said she presented herself as being frail, used a crutch and wore a headscarf when she was arrested in September 2020. Investigators made checks on her health to ascertain if she was well enough to be questioned, and her medical records revealed she had never had cancer treatment. Mr. Meehan said she was using the cancer to delay answering questions. It's our understanding that the family believed she had cancer, and it was only as a result of her being arrested that we informed her family and they became aware. The detective said Barlow's husband was very surprised and shocked to discover the truth, as relatives had been taking her to hospital appointments. Barlow's barrister, Tony Davis, said she was now a broken, beaten and penniless woman. She apologises to each and every victim, and of course there are many, he said. He said 80 hours of counselling had not revealed a motive, but her business was doomed to fail and stemmed from a desire to be liked. Mr. Davis added that once she got into debt, riding that monster, it was inevitable it would come crashing down. Barlow sobbed as she was led from the dock. An ABTA spokesperson said cases such as Barlow's were extremely rare, but urged people to check travel agents' membership on the organisation's website. Holidays can be a target for fraudsters, which is why we encourage people to be vigilant, they added. The sister of a missing mother who disappeared on dog walk is urging members of the public to keep an open mind and still look for her sibling. Nicola Bully, 45, was last seen next to the River Wear in St Michael's on Wear, Lancashire a week ago. Lancashire police said on Friday officers believed she had fallen into the river, but Miss Bully's sister Louise Cunningham said there was no evidence whatsoever of that. In a post on Facebook, she said, "Please keep sharing my Nikki," adding that a river fall was just a theory. She added, "Everyone needs to keep an open mind as not all CCTV and leads have been investigated fully. The police confirmed the case is far from over. A major search has been continuing, including police divers, drones, a helicopter and search and rescue teams, but no trace of her has been found. Police said their working hypothesis is that she has fallen into the river for some reason. They said there was no evidence of anything suspicious. Superintendent Sally Riley said there is absolutely nothing to suggest from all the extensive inquiries we've made that anything untoward has happened to Miss Bully, or that there is any third-party involvement in her disappearance. She said it remained a missing person inquiry. Miss Bully was last seen walking her dog Willow near the River Wear after dropping off her children, aged 6 and 9, at school on the morning of the 27th January. The spaniel was found about 25 minutes after Miss Bully was last seen by another dog walker at about 9:10 GMT. Her phone was also found on a riverside bench, still connected to a work call. One of Miss Bully's friends, Emma White, who has been helping in the search, said she believed we're actually no further on than that, sadly, last Friday. We still have no evidence, and that's why we're out again in force. You don't base life on a hypothesis, do you? You absolutely can have hypotheses, but then you need something to back those hypotheses up to become factual. Detectives said they were as confident as they can be about... Detectives said they were as confident as we can be that Nicola has not left the field where she was last seen, and our working hypothesis is that she has fallen into the river for some reason. Our investigation remains open, and we will of course act on any new information which comes to light. Miss Bully's partner Paul Ansell said he would never lose hope finding her. Police have urged locals to look out along the river for clothing that Miss Bully was last seen wearing. This includes an ankle-length black quilted gilet jacket, a black Engelbert Strauss waist-length coat, black jeans, green walking socks, ankle-length green next wellies, a necklace and a pale blue Fitbit. And in terms of the timeline of the events, at 8:43 Miss Bully was walking along the path by the River Wear, having dropped her children off at school. At 8:47, a dog walker who knows Miss Bully saw her walking along the lower field. 8:53, Miss Bully sent an email to her boss. 9:01, she logged into a Teams call. 9:10, a witness who knows Miss Bully saw her on the upper field walking with her dog Willow. 9:20, police inquiries suggest her phone was on the bench, and 9:30 the Teams call ended, but she stayed logged on. And about 9:35, Miss Bully's mobile phone and Willow were found at a riverside bench. John Lydon, the former Sex Pistols frontman, has failed in his bid to represent Ireland at Eurovision. The 67-year-old had hoped his song Hawaii, about his wife Nora, who lives with Alzheimer's, would be chosen to bring awareness to the disease. Instead, the band Wild Youth was chosen to fly the Irish flag at the song contest in Liverpool in May. They're up against 14 other countries, will be cut down to 10 in the semi-finals. Despite its record 7 wins, Ireland has only qualified for the grand final twice since 2013. Speaking after the victory was announced, Wild Youth singer Conor O'Donoghue said, "I'm shaking. We hope we can do the best job." The group had previously supported Lewis Capaldi, Niall Horan and The Script on tour, and had been tipped to be the next big band to break out of Ireland for years. The winner was selected by TV viewers and national and international juries made up of music experts. In the end, the result came down to the public vote, as Wild Youth were tied on points with another act. act, each being backed by one of the juries, but the band edged ahead on the public vote. Lydon's group Public Image Ltd, which he formed in 1978 after the Sex Pistols split, was part of the 6 acts who performed on Irish TV's The Late Late Show on Friday night. Host Ryan Tubridy told BBC News it was a beautiful reason Lydon hoped to represent Ireland. We were talking about how neurologically music can trigger something that allows people to remember. He loves his wife and he wants her to be recognised, and he wants her disease to be spoken about and eventually cured. During rehearsals, Lydon told the BBC he was nervous about the prospect of being selected to be the Irish entry because it would mean more time away from Nora, who's being looked after by family at home in Los Angeles. Alzheimer's affects nearly 1 million people in the UK and 55 million people worldwide. Numbers are expected to rise significantly over the coming decades. In 2022, the first drug to slow down the condition was described as momentous, although its impact will help future diagnosis rather than people with the condition now. Dementia UK said by choosing to share his experience through this competition and his song Hawaii, more awareness can be raised about dementia. The winners, Wild Youth, appeared shocked on stage as their name was announced as the Eurovision hopefuls. I just wanted to do this because it was something fresh, O'Donoghue told the BBC News. So many people watch it now. It's an amazing competition and it's fun. The UK is hosting the competition on behalf of Ukraine, who won in 2022. On Tuesday, Liverpool was handed the official keys to Eurovision in a handover ceremony, which included the semi-final allocation draw. Wild Youth's We Are One joins a handful of other songs already announced for the song contest this year. In total, 37 countries will participate, and the broadcasters involved have until late March to confirm their acts. Complaints made to the Energy Ombudsman by frustrated customers are at a record high, new data shows. Figures shared with the BBC show 105,340 complaints were received by the Ombudsman in 2022, a jump of more than 50% compared to 2 years before. The data comes as energy suppliers are under intense scrutiny over their practices amid a rising bills. Energy UK, which represents suppliers, said the Ombudsman plays an important role in resolving complex cases. Customers turn to the Energy Ombudsman to independently handle disputes between them and the supplier if it has failed to resolve their issue. The main cause of complaints are to do with incorrect billing, poor customer service and problems switching suppliers, BBC Radio 4's The Money Box programme has found. Of the cases heard, 75% ended up being concluded in the customer's favour. During the last year, energy bills have soared in UK households as the cost of living crisis deepens. Price hike is centred around the Ukraine war, reducing supplies of Russian gas, as well as prices rising because of the demand for energy skyrocketing after COVID restrictions ended. To deal with the surge, the government introduced an energy price guarantee to cap bills for UK households at £2,500 a year for gas and electricity, rising to £3,000 in the spring. It also introduced a cost of living payment, with all households automatically getting a one-off £400 discount on their fuel bills spread over 6 months between October 2022 and March 2023, but data from which suggests UK households are struggling to keep up with their bills, with some 2.3 million UK households missing an essential payment last month, up from 1.9 million in December. Suppliers are also facing renewed scrutiny after Ofgem asked them to suspend the forced installation of prepayment meters into the homes of vulnerable people. Energy suppliers were being given permission to force entry into the UK's poorest homes to install prepayment meters when customers fell behind on bills, an iNewspaper investigation in December revealed. Prepayment meters are the most expensive way to pay for energy, with customers' bills increasing by more than £700 in the last year. There are more than 4 million UK households on prepayment meters. An investigation by the Times this week found that debt agents for British Gas had broken into vulnerable people's homes to fit meters. Following this, energy companies have been asked by the industry regulator, Ofgem, to suspend the forced installation of prepayment meters. Jonathan Braley, the regulator's boss, said he had ordered the review into prepayment meters to uncover poor practice and that he would not hesitate to take the strongest action in our powers where needed. On Thursday, Chris O'Shea, the boss of Centrica, which owns British Gas, told the BBC, "There is nothing that I can say that can express the horror I had when I heard this. When I read this, it is completely unacceptable. The contractor that we've employed, Arvato, has let us down, but I'm accountable for this." Energy UK said while it works tirelessly to resolve complaints, its members have seen a fourfold increase in the number of people contacting them. A spokesperson for Energy UK said with millions of people struggling to pay energy bills as the cost of living soars, more people than ever are contacting their energy supplier for help. Customer service teams have seen a fourfold increase in customer contact and are doing their best to respond to the huge numbers of customers getting in touch, often about complex issues. Our members work tirelessly to resolve complaints themselves. However, where they are unable to come to a resolution with the customer themselves, the Ombudsman plays an important role in making sure complaints can be resolved. British sailors have needed hospital treatment after problems with water supplies on board their warship. Submarine hunter HMS Portland returned to Portsmouth on Friday after the incident. A Royal Navy spokesman said it was a precautionary measure after an issue with the ship's fresh water system. They said measures were being taken to safeguard the ship's company during an investigation, with HMS Richmond asked to provide cover if needed. It is thought that one of the crew members put the wrong chemical into the frigate's water system, designed to convert sea salt water into drinking water. Then, realising the error, quickly raised the alarm. An investigation is now underway. The Ministry of Defence told the BBC that the health and safety of its personnel is of the utmost importance and is taking a number of measures to safeguard the ship's company. HMS Portland spent much of last year patrolling UK waters, and last July cooperated with NATO allies on a submarine hunting exercise in the North Atlantic. It helped track 2 Russian submarines as they sailed into the North Sea along the Norwegian coast. Last month it tracked a Russian warship as it sailed in international waters close to the UK. The Type 23 frigate was commissioned in 2001 and over the years has been used in anti-drug missions in the Caribbean in 2007 and deployed against pirates off the Horn of Africa in 2009. The ship also helped with disaster relief in Belize after Hurricane Dean in 2007. It underwent a lengthy refit in 2021, which included an overhaul of machinery, computers and IT systems. A family bakery established in 1914 was shut its doors for the final time later due to high energy costs and the price of ingredients. Noakes Bakery in Pontarddulais near Swansea cannot continue trading after energy bills soared to an unsustainable level, its owner said. Paul Noakes, aged 76, and his family have run the shop for 3 generations. He said even though the shop is still very busy, it is impossible to absorb the increase in energy prices. Mr. Noakes said he felt now was the time for him to retire and spend more time with his family. However, he said closing the shop made him very emotional. This is a busy, popular shop and always has been, but the costs are too much. When I started, I worked with my father and we started about 4:30 in the morning. It was very hard physically. He added, today people complain about flour bags being about £70 or 31.7 kilograms, but in those days the flour came in huge sacks, which were £140 or 63.5 kilograms. The bakery is facing price increases in the cost of butter, oil and flour. Since May 2021, the price of wheat, an essential ingredient for most products in the bakery, has gone up by 165% due to war in Ukraine. Manager Paul Thomas started working at the bakery when she left school at 16 and has worked there for 43 years. It is going to be a big change in my life. I feel quite emotional, as do all the staff, she said. We are really grateful to all our customers. They have helped pay our wages. During COVID, we had customers who were desperate to get back into the shop for a coffee and company. Bethan Mayer lives in the town and is a regular customer. It's such an institution in the village. It is something we as children have been brought up with. It's a nail in the coffin of the high street in our village, and it's very sad. You lose diversity, choice and employment, and you lose companionship. It won't be the same without Noakes. Emma Thomas owns the neighbouring hairdresser shop. I was shocked to hear the closure, she said. I will miss my rolls and especially the bacon from next door. It's not just local customers that have kept this shop busy. People have travelled from as far afield as Merthyr to shop here. As they prepare to bake the last loaf and heat up the final pasties, staff are already planning a reunion. I'm really sad for it to be closing, said Paula, wiping back the tears. This is all I've ever known, really. Tesla co-founder Elon Musk has been cleared of wrongdoing for a tweet in which he said he had been funding secured to take the electric car maker back into private ownership. Shareholders argued he misled them with his posts in August 2018 and they lost billions of dollars because of them. The proposed $72 billion or 60 billion pounds, but never materialised. If found liable, Musk could have been ordered to pay out billions in damages. It took the 9 jurors less than 2 hours to reach their verdict on the class action lawsuit on Friday afternoon. Mr. Musk, who had wanted the trial moved to Texas, where Tesla is based, arguing he could not get a fair trial in San Francisco, welcomed the outcome. Taking to Twitter, the social media platform he bought for $44 billion last October, he posted, "Thank goodness, the wisdom of the people has prevailed. I'm deeply appreciative of the jury's unanimous findings of innocence in the Tesla 420 Tate private case." Central to the lawsuit was Mr. Musk's tweet on 7th of August 2018, "I'm considering taking Tesla private at $420, funding secured." The plaintiffs also argued that Mr. Musk had lied when he tweeted later in the day that investor supported is confirmed. The stock price surged after the tweets, but fell once again within days as it became clear the deal would not go through. According to an economist hired by the shareholders, investor losses were calculated as as high as $12 billion after many made decisions about buying and selling their shares based on the tweet. The US Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) sued Mr. Musk over his tweets, accusing him of lying to investors. Mr. Musk had agreed to step aside as Tesla board chairman and settled for $20 million. During the 3-week trial, Mr. Musk, who also leads SpaceX and Twitter, had argued he thought he had a verbal commitment from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund for the deal. During his nearly 9 hours on the witness stand, the world's second richest man said, "Just because I tweet something does not mean people believe it or will act accordingly." Shareholders had argued that funding secured suggested more than a verbal agreement. Although Tesla's share price shot up after the tweet was posted, Mr. Musk also questioned whether his tweets had any effect on Tesla's share price. At one point, I tweeted that I thought that, in my opinion, the stock price was too high and it went higher, which is counterintuitive, he said, arguing the effect his tweets have on the stock price can be unpredictable. Mr. Musk said he eventually scrapped the plan to take Tesla private after his discussions with smaller investors led him to believe they would prefer that the firm remain publicly traded. He was not in court when the verdict was read, but he was present during closing arguments earlier on Friday, as dueling portraits were drawn of him by the rival legal teams. Nicholas Porritt, a lawyer for the Tesla shareholders, said, "Our society is based on rules. We need rules to save us from anarchy. Rules should apply to Elon Musk like everyone else." Mr. Musk's attorney, Alex Spiro, said, "Just because it's a bad tweet doesn't make it a fraud." After the verdict, Mr. Porritt said, "We're disappointed with the verdict and are considering next steps." Mr. Musk was generally calm during his testimony, though at times he appeared annoyed at the line of questioning. There were also times of lividity. After a lawyer representing shareholders accidentally called Elon Musk Mr. Tweet, Elon Musk promptly changed his name on Twitter to the same moniker. Several Tesla directors also testified, including James Murdoch, son of Rupert Murdoch. They testified that Mr. Musk did not need the Tesla board to review and buy tweets. Securities fraud lawyer Reed Catherine called the tweet about taking Tesla private as concrete a statement of taking a company private as there can be, and said the not guilty verdict was a travesty to investors and the securities laws. UK Athletics wants a change in legislation to ensure the women's category is lawfully reserved for competitors who are recorded female at birth. The governing body says all transgender athletes should be allowed to compete with men in an open category. Chair Ian Beattie said the governing body wanted athletics to be a welcoming environment for all, but it added it had a responsibility to ensure fairness in women's competition. However, the Equality and Human Rights Commission EHRC said it was disappointed UKA chose to publicise inaccurate advice and question its interpretation of the Equality Act 2010. UKA disagrees with the use of testosterone suppression for transgender women, saying there is currently no scientifically robust independent research showing that all male performance advantage is eliminated. UKA added it has seen no evidence that it is safe for transgender women to reduce their hormonal levels by testosterone suppression, and that there is insufficient research to understand the effects on transgender women if such testosterone suppression is carried out suddenly. Therefore, it would instead like to reserve the female category for those who were recorded female at birth and have not undergone transition. UKA does not believe the sporting exemption introduced in the Equality Act 2010 allows them to lawfully exclude transgender women in possession of a gender recognition certificate from competing. However, the UK government disagrees with UK Athletics' stance that the law does not allow it to ban transgender women from female events on fairness grounds. It believes the 2010 Equality Act does allow sports to protect the female category by putting restrictions on the participation of transgender athletes. The EHRC agreed, citing Section 195 of the Act, which relates to sport. It states that sporting organisations have an exemption to discriminate on grounds of sex in a gender-affected activity and discriminate on grounds of gender reassignment where necessary to secure fair competition or the safety of competitors. Responding to the UKA statement on Friday, the EHRC said it is therefore likely to be lawful for a sporting body or organisation to adopt a trans-exclusive policy in relation to gender-based sporting competition where they can evidence that it is necessary to do so in order to secure fair competition or the safety of competitors. We reached out to UK Athletics and offered to discuss the legal advice underpinning their statement, it added. We are disappointed that they have chosen to publicise their inaccurate advice, and we would urge all organisations to consult our website, which explains equality law and how it relates to these issues. It is the latest development in a series of sports debating, reviewing and adjusting their transgender inclusion policies. Last year, British Triathlon became the first British sporting body to establish a new open category in in which transgender athletes can compete. UK's stance contrasts with that of World Athletics, which has proposed continuing to allow transgender women to compete in female international track and field events. The world governing body has said its preferred option was to tighten the sport's eligibility rules, but still use testosterone limits as the basis for inclusion. A policy document suggesting the amendments to its transgender inclusion policy has been sent to World Athletics member federations as part of a consultation process before a vote next week. So what has been the reaction? LGBTQ+ charity Stonewall said it was vital that sports use robust evidence from the actual practice and experience of their sports when seeking to update inclusion and participation policies. Stonewall Director of Communications Robbie DeSantos added, "The scientific evidence based on trans people in sport is developing but is far from conclusive. According to 2021 census data, 0.1% of the population of England and Wales identified as transgender women, with the same number identified as transgender man." DeSantis said that although the transgender population may be small, they have every right to participate in and enjoy the benefits of sport. A Fair Play for Women spokesperson said they were pleased by UK Athletics' call for a change in legislation. "Categories are how we make sport inclusive," they said. "Categories in sport work by keeping people out, not by letting people choose what category they want to be in. Open and female options means there is a place for everyone," they added, citing a 2021 report from the Sports Council's equality group, SCEG, that suggested adding open and universal categories to improve transgender inclusion in sport. UKA Chair Beattie said, "We would appeal to all those engaged in this discussion online to share their thoughts in a way that is respectful of the differing opinions and sensitive nature of the debate." Last week, British shot putter Emilia Strickler claimed World Athletics' revised rules would leave women at a serious disadvantage, while long-distance runner Eilish McLaughlin said a lot more work needs to be done around the possible advantages of transgender women competing in elite female athletics. Other sports have banned transgender women from participating in elite female competition if they've gone through any part process of male puberty and concerns they have an unfair advantage. In June 2022, World Athletics President Lord Coe welcomed the move by FINA, swimming's world governing body, to stop transgender athletes from competing in women's elite races if they've gone through any part process of male puberty, insisting that fairness is non-negotiable. FINA's decision followed a report by a task force of leading figures from the world of medicine, law and sport, which said that going through male puberty meant transgender women retained a relative performance advantage over biological females, even after medication to reduce testosterone. FINA also aimed to establish an open category at competitions for swimmers whose gender identity is different than their sex recorded at birth. While such moves have been praised for protecting female sport, some critics have said these rules are discriminatory. Olympic diving champion Tom Daley was furious at FINA's approach, saying, "Anyone that's told that they can't compete or can't do something they love just because of who they are, it's not on." US winger and two-time World Cup winner Megan Rapinoe also criticised the exclusion of transgender women in some sports. The Rugby Football League and Rugby Football Union also banned transgender women from competing in female-only forms of their games. It followed World Rugby becoming the first international sports federation to say transgender women cannot compete at the elite and international level of the women's game in 2020. Reaction to a ban on choirs from performing the Tom Jones classic Delilah at Welsh international rugby matches has been mixed. While some approve, others say they can't understand how the ballad's lyrics, a fictional account of a jealous man murdering his wife, could be seen as trivialising violence against women. Depictions of gendered violence have featured in art forms like plays, operas and songs for centuries and continue to be performed live to this day. So does this row over Delilah mean other types of performances should face similar scrutiny? "There is a huge amount of violence against women in Shakespeare," said Diane Purkis, a professor of English literature at Keble College, Oxford. "The tragedy aspect in many of these plays is that the women in them suffer. In Othello, for example, the main character's wife, Desdemona, is murdered by a jealous husband like the wife in Delilah. But unlike this song, Shakespeare's play shows that Othello ultimately really regrets it, and it is made really clear that his wife was not guilty of being unfaithful. Othello is in the wrong and his actions are never justified. Yes, the audience is subjected to a depiction of a woman being murdered by her partner, but what they are also witnessing a parable about acting impulsively and jumping to conclusions. Shakespeare wanted audiences to feel uncomfortable to encourage them to confront their own prejudices. He was a great asker of questions. I'm not sure that was the intention with Delilah. Jealous men who kill their wives are central to the plots of several of the most famous operas, still drawing audiences across the world, including productions like Pagliacci, Wozniak and Carmen." Opera director Daisy Evans said it was difficult to know what the attitudes of composers of the past were, or whether the gendered violence in their work aimed to educate audiences. But she said modern-day directors could make sure that women and their experiences were properly represented. If theatre is supposed to be an arena where we see extreme circumstances played out, then I think it's still relevant to put those stories on. Older productions sometimes may have not portrayed the subject well in the past, and directors are absolutely key to make sure women are seen in the right way. It's in our power to inform audiences' reaction to characters. For instance, if I was to stage a production of Carmen, I would work hard to make sure she was the most powerful person on stage, and her lover, John Doze, the weak one. Miss Evans, who is currently directing The Magic Flute for the Welsh National Opera, added, "These stories can be uncomfortable, but you'd be dumbing down society by stopping them from being told. It's about how the audience is experiencing it. If you're listening to a pop song, you're sometimes just humming the tune and not thinking where these words are coming from. A song like Delilah is minutes long. The violence depicted in it is totally different to that in opera, because you have hours to understand the context, the characters, before that violence plays out." Domestic abuse campaigner David Challen said portrayals of gendered violence on stage and on screen help reflect society and flesh out issues facing women. "I don't believe gendered violence should stop being depicted in art. The problem with Delilah is it's a celebrated song that uses domestic abuse as a topic, but people don't take any real meaning from it," he said. "There's joy about a woman being brutally murdered in the song, and society really shouldn't be finding any joy from that. But when it comes to longer form content, it's really important to have awareness of the gendered nature of domestic abuse, so people are aware it affects people around them." Fellow domestic abuse campaigner Rachel Williams, who survived a shotgun attack by her estranged husband, said she believed education surrounding violence against women was better than banning the content that featured it. She said, "I loved the song Delilah, but stopped singing it when I realised it was about glorifying the murder of a woman. We shouldn't normalise lyrics like this and should continue to call them out. I don't think we should get rid of them depictions of violence against women in art, but we can use them in today's messaging of how acceptable it once was, how time has moved on." When Karen Alexandra moved into her new house, she found it had an energy smart meter. She quite liked how it told her how much she was spending in real time. But as energy prices rocketed over the past year, she found checking the meter became an obsession. "I realised it's the first thing I do in the morning, and when you see how much you've already spent, it makes your tummy take a lurch." Charities have said that they're hearing rising reports of smart meter anxiety. Age UK and disability rights charity Scope have told the BBC that although smart meters can help with budgeting, they can also have a negative impact on people's mental health. Common signs of smart meter anxiety include repeatedly checking your smart meter, worrying about what it means for your finances, and feeling out of control, said BBC Mornings Live's Dr. Runge. Karen's husband isn't well at the moment, so the couple are in the house a lot, which she thinks is part of the problem. When you're in the house and you're not going to work to take your mind off it, it can really prey on you. It's almost like a demon on your shoulder, constantly reminding you on how much you've spent, she said. Karen describes herself as having a smart meter anxiety and laughs while explaining that she's had to turn the display unit to face the wall. She has limited herself to only checking the meter at the start and end of each day. "I just don't want that financial worry to be in my face all the time," she said. And she's not alone. One BBC Morning Live viewer, Catherine Lamb, contacted the programme to say that she had shut hers in a drawer as she was becoming too obsessed by it and panicking.